Welcome to my Elegant Fellowship. I'm thrilled to have you on this journey with me. This podcast is all about exploring the timeless principles of personal development, and I'm Fernanda, your elegant host, guiding you through it all on the Elegantia Linea podcast. Before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. I'm not a psychologist or a certified coach. What I am is a mentor, someone passionate about helping you explore and harness the power of your autonomy through self-awareness. What I share here comes from years of experience in process improvement, training, and personal growth, as well as my own journey through therapy and studying psychology. These tools have empowered me to navigate life with resilience and purpose, and I'm here to share them with you. The truth is that personal development isn't always linear. In fact, it's often messy and unpredictable. And that's why I'm here, to help you bring structure to the chaos so you don't feel overwhelmed by the uncertainty. My mission is to help you construct a life that feels purposeful and fulfilling, giving you clarity, direction, and the tools to unlock your full potential. If you haven't listened to episode 2 or episode 3, I highly recommend going back to them before continuing with this episode. They lay the groundwork for what we're tackling today, and trust me, the process will make much more sense if you've walked through those foundational steps first. If you're ready to go and have accepted the terms and conditions for today's episode, let's dive in. This is one of the most exciting parts of the process for me because it's often when I have the most eureka moments. Do you know when you feel itchy and keep scratching it to find relief, only to realize that the reason it was itchy was because you've gotten bitten by a mosquito? Yeah, discovering the reason something bothers you feels exactly like that. Sometimes the real cause is unveiled, and when you figure it out, it truly transforms your perception of how your viewpoint is engineered. Other times, you feel frustrated because it was right under your nose. Whether the root causes for your deepest troubles are obvious or not, it is certainly marvelous to finally take the stone out of your shoe so you can walk normally again. As always, I'm here to guide you in doing just that. The third phase of the DMAIC method is the analysis phase. This is where you dig deep beyond surface symptoms into the underlying issues that hold us back. We will explore 2 powerful tools: the Pareto Principle, which is a practical way to identify the key contributors to most of your struggles, and the 5 why analysis, a simple yet profound method for uncovering root causes. But, fair warning, this phase can be emotional. Discovering the why behind your problems often means confronting difficult truths, and that's not always pleasant. However, remember that even if it gets painful, there is a way out. And that's why you need to get through this process. Growth requires courage, and analyzing root causes is a pivotal step towards creating meaningful change. If you need encouragement, here's a story that might help demonstrate how change, while scary, can also be freeing when you know where you are going. In April 2022, I had to take sick leave from work because my fibromyalgia symptoms were flaring up again. At the time, I was working full-time while finishing my first year of a master's degree, which was also full-time. My personal life was in shambles, my dating life was even worse, and on top of it all, I was struggling financially. Ultimately, all these pressures led to extreme stress and my second burnout. A little while after turning 27, when the university semester ended, I began reflecting deeply on my life and how I was living it. This is something I always do after my birthday. I enjoy seeing how much has changed and what I've learned up to that point in my life. But this time felt different. I needed to go even deeper into self-reflection. Firstly, I didn't know if I would receive a scholarship to finish my studies. Secondly, and more importantly, there wasn't a single conversation where I didn't exclaim, "I'm really tired," or "I'm exhausted." I never responded with, "I'm doing well," or "not so bad." For me, being tired was code for, "I am not well." Yet, despite recognizing the code within myself, both mental and physical exhaustion prevented me from addressing it properly. It was an incredibly complicated moment due to how many struggles were colliding at once. To cope with stress, temporarily, I tried going out, but it wasn't working anymore. The places I was going, like strange parties or clubs, no longer resonated with me, nor did some of the people around me who also didn't make sense as companions in my life journey. So I was in the middle of all that chaos. I had no idea where to start making the changes or how to take care of myself on my own. During the summer break from university, I was able to take some time off with less of a workload, but it didn't really help as much as it should have. I knew I was going to be a wreck if I continued that way. So I asked myself, what do I need to do to stop living this way? This is a good opportunity to introduce you to the Pareto Principle. Often we face so many problems that it's hard to decide what to prioritize. In episode 2, I'm sure you've identified many problems in your life as well. There's so much to tackle, and the question becomes, which problem is causing the most damage? Which one should we prioritize in finding a solution first? That's where the Pareto Principle comes in. So let's dig deeper into that and use my story as an example of how I was able to deal with each one of those struggles and finally resolve all the issues at their root. Step 1. Identify the problems you're facing. I will always repeat that naming the problems is the beginning of true transformation. For this tool, it remains a powerful truth. My problems were, I was juggling multiple things all at once, and it was truly exhausting. I had a full-time job, was studying for my master's degree full-time, was struggling financially, had a horrible dating history, was outgrowing some friends and settings, and at the same time, I was dealing with intense burnout. The Pareto Principle, or the 80-20 rule, shows that 80% of our struggles often stem from just 20% of our problems. So instead of trying to fix everything at once, we need to ask, which problems are causing the most damage? Which one should I tackle first? Step 2, apply the Pareto Principle. I had a lot of things to deal with at the same time, but some problems were definitely causing me more pain than others. After writing them all down and measuring the problems, as we did in episode 3, finding the 20% becomes easier. And here's how I would list the problems in order of priority. First, burnout and stress from balancing work and study. Second, exhaustion. I was so tired all the time, I couldn't focus on anything properly. Third, health issues, particularly fibromyalgia, which made it even harder to cope with the exhaustion. Fourth, financial struggles. Having to pay for my master's studies with rising inflation and rent prices became a constant worry. Fifth, social circles. The people I was hanging out with weren't the most supportive or fulfilling. And lastly, my dating life. I wasn't meeting the right kind of people, and my dating life was taking a toll on me emotionally. For me, it was clear. My health, the exhaustion, and burnout were the top priorities. Step 3 is prioritize based on impact. The beauty of the Pareto Principle is that it helps you focus. I knew that my health was the most urgent issue. I realized that if I didn't address my burnout and exhaustion, everything else, my work, my studies, my personal life would suffer. It wasn't enough to keep pushing through. I had to prioritize recovery. I decided to focus on first priority, health. I took a step back, decided to quit my master's program, took some days off from work, and went on a 4-day trip to a nearby city. I made it my mission to look after my body. I rested, reinforced my treatment for fibromyalgia, and started getting proper sleep. The second priority was exhaustion. Once my health started improving, I could focus on regaining energy. This meant setting better routines and ensuring that I wasn't overworking myself anymore. Third priority, finances. I didn't get the scholarship at university despite having high grades, and I didn't want to be in debt. So along with quitting my master's program to avoid extra expenses, I asked for financial support from my dad until I could find another job that paid me more. Fourth priority, social circles. This one, though important, wasn't as urgent as the other problems. The wrong crowd wasn't directly affecting my health, so I knew I could gradually phase this out while working on bigger issues. And the fifth priority was personal life. While I was emotionally drained from dating the wrong people, I realized I couldn't solve that while physically burnt out. So I put this on the back burner, knowing I'd have energy to address it once my health improved. Now, step 4, act, and see results. Now that I had identified the problems that needed to be tackled first, I focused my energy on those. Once I started feeling better, I regained confidence and began making significant choices that led me directly to who I am today. And with this newfound energy, I started taking control of my personal life, distancing myself from people who didn't support my growth and meeting those who did. The results were incredible. By focusing on the most important areas first, I began seeing improvements in other aspects of my life as well. My health improved significantly, my energy levels increased, and I could think more clearly about what I wanted in relationships. The key takeaway from the Pareto Principle is that not all problems are equal. By identifying the 20% of problems causing 80% of your struggles, you can focus your energy on fixing those first. For me, it was about taking care of my health, reducing exhaustion, asking for financial support, and gradually improving my social life. This approach gave me clarity and strength to tackle everything one step at a time, and even inspired me later to take 5 steps even further. That year was a huge turning point for me. So ask yourself, what 20% of problems in your life are causing 80% of your struggles? Start with those. Once you focus on real priorities, everything else will fall into place more easily. Once I prioritized my problems using the Pareto Principle, I needed to dig deeper into their root causes. And that's why the 5 why analysis came in. This method might not be familiar to you yet, but trust me, it's very easy to use. Now, the results might be hard pills to swallow at times. However, this is a powerful tool for uncovering truths beneath surface level issues. In my case, my poor choices in dating required exploring an entirely different way of thinking. As always, feel free to pause this episode whenever necessary so you have time to do the exercises. Also, you don't need to share these answers with me unless you want to. Here's how the 5 why analysis works. First, you identify the problem. At this point in our journey together, you're an expert at this already. Then you ask yourself, why? Write down your answer. Then repeat. For each answer received, ask why again. Keep repeating until you uncover the root causes deeply connected with your current issue. Sometimes asking why 5 times is enough, but you can keep going even further if you feel there is more to it. The reason the 5 whys technique is so effective is because it pushes you beyond the obvious answer, forcing deeper introspection into core truths needing resolution. Once you uncover the root cause, it becomes so much easier to take meaningful action to address the underlying issue rather than just treating the symptoms. If you don't tackle the root cause, your problems will likely reproduce in different ways and spread into all areas of your life. So often we don't realize that what we're trying to treat is just a consequence that can lead to a vicious cycle of frustration and disappointment. Let me share how I use the 5 why analysis to uncover something very deep within myself. Relationships. Relationships. This was the one area that had been my Achilles heel my entire life. During that year, I started really thinking about the kind of people I was choosing to date. I was trying to understand why I kept falling back into old patterns with certain types of people, even after acknowledging they were not right for me. This line of questioning began because of one simple reason. One of my best friends was expecting her first child. Now, let me tell you something. For most of my life, I had been telling people that I didn't want kids. And I didn't want to get married. I'd been saying this over and over from a very early age. Ever since I was a child, I was always saying marriage was a sham, that there was no such thing as happily ever after. And this was coming from a 13-year-old who loved soppy love stories. At first, I don't think I even mentioned anything about kids, but at one point in my life, I remember saying if I ever did have children, it would only be through adoption. By the time I was around 19 or 20, though, I had decided no kids, no marriage, full stop. And let me tell you, I embraced that mentality fully. This belief became so ingrained that I had countless reasons ready for why I didn't want kids or marriage. People would ask me why, and I always had an answer ready at the tip of my tongue about independence or career or genetics or how terrible men are. At 24, I even went so far as to ask my gynecologist about sterilization because I was absolutely certain I didn't want kids. She talked me out of it, though, and so life carried on as nature intended. But then, when my friend told me she was pregnant with her loving and supportive husband by her side, it made me pause. It made me ask myself, why don't I want to get married or have kids? And instead of repeating the same answers I gave everyone else, this time I decided to be brutally honest with myself. There was no one to impress or persuade. It was just me asking myself the real reason why. It was such a remarkable moment and intense in every way. My friend and I talked every day without exception during her pregnancy. She shared with me the symptoms, the ups and downs, which she was going through every single day. Despite the distance between us, it felt like I was part of it. And here's what struck me, her relationship with her husband. They had been together for years. They had the most romantic and healthy relationship you could imagine. And they were about to have their first child together. It opened my eyes because honestly, I have never seen a healthy relationship like that up close before. It made me question my own views on marriage and children. I came to understand something. It wasn't that I didn't want to get married or have kids. It was that I didn't want to do it alone. When I envisioned my future, it was always just me, alone, fighting for my career, but still alone. I couldn't picture myself with a partner by my side. Even when I was in relationships, marriage wasn't something I could imagine. Not long-term futures or shared dreams with anyone. So then came the next question. Why? Why couldn't I see myself getting married or having children with someone? And as I dug deeper into this question, really explored it, I began to uncover something else. I didn't know what those things could look like for me. The idea of having kids on my own, raising a child alone, absolutely terrified me. I didn't want to be a single mother hustling through jobs and raising a child without a partner who was equally involved. That wasn't the life I wanted, and honestly, it was the most common reality I had seen my whole life. I struggled to visualize what my future could look like with someone because none of the people I had dated seemed like they could be the kind of father I wanted for a child. When I started asking myself the deeper reasons behind this fear, it became clear just how emotional it was for me. I had always wanted those things, kids, marriage, but that vision had been shattered by my first relationship and the unhealthy ones I had experienced since. Growing up, I didn't have many positive examples of loving, supportive relationships. When you don't see it, it's hard to believe it's possible for you. Or sometimes you're so blinded by the normality of bad examples that you can't even see the good ones right in front of you. For instance, I never fully appreciated how healthy and beautiful my mom's relationship with my stepdad was, because it was overshadowed by all the bad ones around me. And then there's that feeling, that deep-rooted belief that you don't deserve it. Especially after going through trauma in dating, it becomes so easy to think that's for other people, not for me. And for a long time, that's exactly what I thought. But as I began to answer my own why questions, something shifted. I realized it wasn't that I didn't want those things. I did. It was just that I hadn't known how to picture that future for myself because I had never seen a healthy, loving partnership to model it after. Once I admitted that to myself, I started investigating how I could make it possible. Not just to have a child, but to have one with a partner I wanted to marry. Someone who shared the same values and vision for the future. Someone I could choose. And of course, once I figured it out, the work began. But that's a story for another day. I won't spoil the surprise of how I got to where I am today. What matters is this. Now I can finally visualize what my life could look like. The kind of partner I want by my side, the kind of marriage I want to have, the values I want to instill in my children, the kind of education I want to give them. There are things that became crystal clear during my journey. But again, that's another chapter. I really wanted to share this because exercises like this truly help us move forward. Sometimes they're incredibly challenging, especially when they force us to confront the biggest problems from our past. It doesn't always have to be sad or overly emotional, but let's be honest, it can take a toll on us. When you dig deep into childhood issues or emotions tied to past experiences, it can sometimes damage how we perceive ourselves. But that's okay. Sometimes we must go through a form of death, letting go of the old version of ourselves so we can be reborn into something new. Personally, I believe this isn't just necessary, it's essential. It's not something that happens just once, it should happen repeatedly, because that's how we truly discover who we can become. We have an active voice in shaping that path. In a nutshell, here's how it unfolded when I asked why. Why don't I want kids or marriage? My answer was because deep down, I couldn't picture myself with someone else long term. And raising a child alone, that really scared me. Why? Because none of my past relationships felt like they could last long term. The men I dated didn't share my values or have positive examples of parenthood. They either didn't want kids or weren't ready for that responsibility. Why? Because they weren't healthy partnerships. They lacked mutual support and shared values. And honestly, I didn't know what my values were or what I truly wanted in a relationship. I kept choosing men who weren't emotionally available because they mirrored my own unresolved wounds. Why? Because experiencing an abusive relationship during my formative years shaped my view of love. It made me think unhealthy dynamics were normal, and growing up without seeing healthy relationships with loving parents reinforced that belief. Why? Because without those examples, it felt impossible to believe such partnerships were possible for me or that I deserved them. This exercise uncovered something profound. It wasn't that I didn't want kids or marriage. It was fear and a lack of positive examples that made it hard for me to envision them as part of my future. Once this truth came into focus, everything shifted. For the first time ever, I allowed myself to imagine a future where marriage and children were possible. With someone who shared my values, a partner who aligns with my vision for life. And once that door opened, my life became so much better. I finally saw a world of chances to find real love. This is why tools like the Pareto Principle and 5-why analysis work so beautifully together. The Pareto Principle helps you prioritize which problems need tackling first. The 5-why analysis digs deep into those problems to uncover the root causes. In my case, the Pareto Principle showed me that health and burnout were top priorities. Those were my 20% causing 80% of my struggles. And then the 5-why analysis helped me understand why certain patterns, like avoiding deep relationships or gravitating towards unattainable men, kept recurring in my life. Together, these tools gave me clarity and direction during one of the most challenging periods of my life. An interesting thing about self-awareness is this. Once you start going through this journey, mastering conversations with yourself, asking all these questions about who you are and who you're becoming, you get slightly addicted to it. Especially if you're like me, a deep thinker at heart, it feels good, doesn't it? To improve yourself. Once you start seeing results, once you begin feeling proud of who you're becoming, you feel like you're getting closer and closer to who you've always wanted to be. And honestly, it's so rewarding. You just want to keep doing it. So let's do it. Thank you for listening today. If this episode resonated with you, I encourage you to try these tools yourself. Start small, ask yourself why, and see where it leads you. Share your journey with me on Instagram. I would love to hear how these ideas are helping you grow. There, I also share additional resources, visual guides, and tools to help you along your journey. On the next episode, we will finally get to the improve phase, which is where we get to the solutions to the problems and finally do the hands-on work of implementing them. And so the journey continues. See you next time and stay aligned. This is Elegantia, the podcast to help you unlock your full potential.